garrison during the winter, writing that Garrison Gertie served to, and I'll try to quote him, chill the enthusiasm of the troops, sap the foundation of patriotism, and destroy the efficiency of the army. Well, we'll see a little bit what he did about that. In March 1865, he was promoted to lieutenant colonel and given command of the new 1st Oregon Infantry Regiment Volunteers. He was promoted to full colonel in June 65, and in July was made commander of the District of Oregon, and then after U.S. Army General Wright's death in August, he became commander of the entire Department of the Columbia, which is Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. Under Colonel Curry's command, Oregon units were scattered from Fort Steilacoom on Puget Sound to Fort Hall in southern Idaho. They established 9 new camps in preparation for winter operations. Well, he was mustered out in November of 1865, and his plans for a winter campaign were only partially fulfilled. However, in 1866, Lieutenant Colonel, later Major General George Crook, adopted this effective strategy for his campaigns in Idaho and Oregon, and during the 1870s, he extended this strategy to the American Southwest and the Great Plains. In civilian life, George Curry practiced law at Eugene, Salem, and Oregon City, farmed near Lafayette, and was editor of La Grande Observer. He died in La Grande in 1906. Yuma Halish, also known as Yum Halish or Umahantali, was considered a major Cayuse war chief. These Cayuse were a small but important culture of warriors and traders making their home in the Blue Mountains and in the valleys of the Umatilla and Walla Walla rivers. In 1855, Chief Yuma Halish and several Cayuse warriors accompanied Major Granville Holler's expedition from Fort Dalles to the Upper Snake, where a number of immigrants had been murdered a year earlier. During the Yakima War of 1856, Chief Yuma Halish played the role of peacemaker. In the spring of 1864, Captain George B. Curry marched south from Fort Walla Walla, leading an expedition composed of Companies E, F, and part of A of the 1st Oregon Volunteer Cavalry. On the 30th of April, they made camp on the south bank of the Umatilla River and invited members of the Umatilla Indian Reservation to accompany them as scouts. Chief Yuma Halish and 10 of his warriors volunteered. They accompanied this expedition as it traveled 2,000 miles that summer in the Owyhee, Malheur, Steens, and John Day country. They had several skirmishes with Paiute warriors, but suffered no losses or defeats. In his report, Captain Curry described his Cayuse allies in these words, and I quote, "Without pay, they furnished their own horses, 2 apiece, and left their homes to fight the white man's battle. Bold riders, fine marksmen, and trusty warriors, equal to the Cossacks in agility and the Mamelukes in bravery and intrepidity. If I had the authority to double their strength, there can be no doubt but that the spring flowers of 1865 would have come and found peace upon our border, so long the scene of plunder, massacre, and torture." Okay, you probably know who the Cossacks were. They were a famous peasant cavalry from the Ukraine, but you may not know about the Mamelukes. They were slave warriors from southeastern Europe who served Muslim rulers during the 9th through 13th centuries and then ruled Egypt for almost 300 years. Well, Yuma Halish was one of missionary Dr. Marcus Whitman's early pupils. In the spring of 1874, Yuma Halish traveled to Lapwai in Idaho to be baptized by missionary Henry Spalding, and he took the name of Marcus Whitman as his own, and he died shortly thereafter. Okay, our third person, James N.W. Ballou, spelled B-E-L-I-E-U in most records, was neither a hero nor a scoundrel, but he had an interesting military life. He was born in Tennessee, moved to Oregon in the 1840s, served as 3rd Sergeant in Company B of the Regiment of Riflemen during the Cayuse War of 1847-48. He then served in 2 different units of the 2nd Regiment of Oregon Mounted Volunteers during the Rogue Wars of 1855-56. He married in 1857 and moved to a place near Roseburg, Oregon, where he worked as a freighter. When the Civil War broke out and regular Army units were called back east, and Oregon volunteers were asked to fill the void, he stepped forward and enlisted in Walla Walla to become a member of Captain Curry's Company E, 1st Regiment Cavalry, Oregon Volunteers. The year 1862 was not a particularly eventful time for Company E. Remember, I said they really didn't start campaigning until 1863. So according to Captain Curry, The summer of 1862 was consumed in doing garrison duty and patrolling the regions around Fort Walla Walla, arresting refractory Indians, and doing escort duty. Well, maybe this wasn't excitement enough for James Ballou because he deserted. On 4 August 1862, he was apprehended 2 months later and sentenced by general court-martial.
Given to by the First Lady of Oregon, and we received an award from Benton County and also a national award from the Sons of Union Veterans. She's just been a fantastic person, an author, historian herself. That's Judy Johnson. Looks like Judy didn't make it up from Corvallis today, so we'll get that.
Thank you very much, Randy, and going to see us. Thanks for allowing me to come here and do this. A few of you may wonder why there's a retired Marine gunnery sergeant standing in front of you today. 63 years ago, on Memorial Day, or Decoration Day, my great-grandfather stood here alongside of this statue and dedicated it. In front of a group of over 500 people in the cemetery. He dedicated it to the group that's not standing on the ground, but it's ones that are standing a little bit lower down. A group that they referred to as comrades. These are people who have given their all and then stacked arms one final time before they went to stand alongside of the heroes of our nation. Who were these GAR veterans that we referred to as comrades? They filled cemeteries all over the United States. Who were they? They were Union sailors, soldiers, and Marines who had volunteered and would fill the ranks and be the GAR. They were the backbone and moral fiber of our great nation. Most of these people had endured marches through several states, often wearing out the shoes that they had on their feet and walking barefooted before those shoes were resupplied to them. They had endured freezing conditions and continued to fire their weapons even when their fingers were frostbitten and they had no shoes on their feet. They had endured heat and humidity like we can't even imagine. They had sweat until they ran out of sweat, and they continued to fight. Why did they do this? There wasn't any penicillin if they got hurt, and if they got so much as a scratch, the chances are an infection may kill them. They fought on empty stomachs when there wasn't enough food to go around, and they kept fighting. There was no radio, no TV, no weather reports, no email, no cell phones, no Blackberries other than the ones you picked to eat. Communications with loved ones at home was via mail. Often those letters were received after the person that wrote them was dead. They didn't do it for money, they didn't do it for personal gain or prestige. They did it because it was what they believed in. They often did it against popular opinion, often the opinion of their families, because it was what was right to do, even if it meant their life. The GAR quickly became the preeminent veterans organization in the United States after the Civil War, and all 6 presidents would be GAR veterans. Their most observed legacy was Decoration Day on the 30th of May, or as we know it today, Memorial Day. Commander-in-Chief Penland died at the age of 101 after this statue was dedicated. The last surviving member of the GAR died in 2006. Albert Wilson would be 107 years old that year. That was the year I was born. I have 4 short stories that I want to tell you before I step down. Is there anybody here that can tell me where in the United States the term Hell's Half Acre came from?
Gettysburg.
Hell's Half Acre came from a place called Stones River near Murfreesboro, Tennessee. If my great-great-grandfather, Theodore's father, was here, he could tell you. He was gut shot by a grazing fire from a cannonball at Stones River. That's where Hell's Half Acre came from. It was a little small area, actually about 16,000 square meters, and it's one of the most deadly places on any American battlefield. After John was gut shot with a cannonball, they left him for dead on the field, and he picked up his guts and he walked back into camp nearly a mile, and he lived for 4 days before the infection got him and he died. He's buried in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. His son, Theodore, would be 14 years old at that time. The second story is how Theodore got in the Union Army. Even then, you couldn't join the Union Army unless you were 18 years old. And having tried 3 times at 3 different stands to get in the Union Army, he went home and he got a pencil and a paper and he wrote the number 18 on it and he stuck it in the soles of his shoes. And then he went back and he tried again. And they said, "Are you 18 or over?" And he said, "I'm over 18 now." After the Civil War, Theodore left Indiana. That's where he's from. And he decided he was going to California. And he had enough money for a ride all the way to California, a train ride to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and from there transfer to a state, or not a stage line, but a wagon train that was going to California. And he did as many young men do. He decided that he was going to do a little bit of gambling in Cheyenne, and he lost the second part of his trip. He ended up walking 1,400 miles over the old California Mormon Immigrant Trail into Sacramento. As he told the story, the moral is, never play another man's game. And the last one I have is, he had attended a Civil War memorial dedication at Gettysburg. And at Gettysburg, a young Boy Scout asked him if he would like a ride in a wheelchair. And Theodore looked at him and smiled and said, "Get in, young man, and I'll give you a ride." I want to say thanks to a few people here that took a little bit of time out of their lives to come out here because they knew I was going to be here and do this, and I want to say thanks for their support. First, I want to say thanks to my brother Alan. He's not with us anymore because our Commander-in-Chief has called him away. But not without blessing us with the presence of his wife Helen, my sister-in-law Helen Penland, his son Darren, and wife Sharon, and 2 of my nephews, John and William Penland, over here. To another Marine here on the stage, my cousin, Buzz Penland. Thanks, Buzz. And also to his family. And there's too many of them for me to name here. The best man and the maid of honor at my wedding, Bill Robinson and his wife Willow. Thank you very much. And back here in the back underneath the tent, Sam Aborn and his wife Dina, whose wedding I attended last year. That's another story. I'd like to say a special thanks to my cousin Susan Jones, that also is here with us today from the Bay Area. She flew up here when she found out I was going to be here. And my cousin Lorraine, Buster's sister, for being up here and coming up here from California as well. A special thanks goes out to my parents, Farabelle and Bill Penland. Without their love and guidance, I wouldn't have made it through this adventure. I'm eternally grateful to both of them, and we'll miss them forever. Last but not least, the people I'm closest to. I want to say special thanks to my wife, Leigh, who's back in Italy right now, finishing up cleaning our home and getting us moved so that when I get back there on the 3rd, we can manage to leave on the 2nd, being transferred to Washington, D.C. To my ex-wife and best friend, June Watanabe, who took care of my home for many years, and who took care of my children when I was away as a Marine. My daughter, Crystal, who has held my heart from the moment she was born, and my son, Jacob, who taught me that there's always another perspective in life. My mother told me one time, you're not gone until you're forgotten. So I'll leave each of you with this challenge. Do not let these soldiers be forgotten. Thank you.
All right, I think it's time that we unwrap this bad boy behind me. So we're going to have the Richard Penland do the task that his great-grandfather did about 63 years ago. And Jason, would you come back up and take the other side, and we'll show you the work that's been done here.
Music.